So we're going to do a practice of some long held hamstring stretches, but some of the things that happen when we move the hamstrings when we move our legs differently instead of just in unison, we can, if our hamstrings or any other muscle group are real snug and not very open, we can do a lot of weird things with our pelvis to try to accommodate for the lack of length that we have in certain muscle groups. So the ball, so everybody needs one of the squishy balls. The ball that we're going to be using today is kind of to reset our sacrum. We're going to begin with it and we're going to end with it. And this is to help us in a very functional way. So you know how when you lay down with a block underneath you in a bridge pose, and it's very restorative and it kind of settles your pelvis well, settles your SI joints well. We're going to do that, but with a ball. So it's a little bit less stable. So we can kind of feel how mobile our pelvis really is. And hopefully get to a place where those intrinsic stabilizers come to help so that we can seek pelvic stability no matter what our legs are doing or what the rest of us is doing. All right, so sit up straight and tall and take a moment to drop your awareness down into your body. Maybe you've been outside today in this beautiful spring day. Maybe you've been outside the last few days and you've gotten to smell some flowers or at least see some beautiful, beautiful eruptions of flowers. So let's just take a moment to absorb the season. Even if you're, in your basement or something where you're not really connected to the outdoors, let's just enjoy what's here on the planet right now. Let's try not to take it for granted, the beauty of spring. So allow your sit bones to drop down as if you are also settling some roots down into the earth. Feel a sense of weight through your pelvis where you're really quite grounded. There's not much that could take you off your pedestal. And then keep that. See if you can keep the weight of the legs, the weight of the pelvis, the sense that your pelvis is in a stable place, that you're not rolling back or forward, but really anchored in the center. And from there, climb out of your pelvis a little bit. Feel the spine grow. And notice when you start to lift your spine, what shifts in your pelvis? Do your hip flexors start to kick in a little bit? Do you have a sense of wanting to lean into one side or the other? Just paying attention. Now open up the collarbones, drop the shoulder blades, feel a sense of heart space. Allow your head to land over your spine. And with this beautiful alignment and space and stability, breathe. A steady breath in, a steady breath out. And place the hands at your heart. Offer an intention, seek some gratitude. Let's release the hands and find our way onto our back. Right, so as you lie down, notice, the difference when your body is in a horizontal versus a vertical position. Have your little ball along with the rest of your props. Make sure you have a strap close by. Okay. All right. So first, just stretch out your arms, stretch out your legs, and enjoy the length, that sense of the beautiful morning stretch, an invitation to welcome yourself into the day, to open up your body, to say hello, and bring your knees into your chest and rock a little bit. Maybe swaying from side to side. Maybe you like to be still. And then let's circle, rolling the knees one direction, rolling them another direction. And then open the knees away from each other and bring them back in toward each other, so you have that sense of where are the hips today. What's my range of motion in these hip joints today? And just allow a sense of ease as you bring your legs straight up in the air, point your toes and flex your toes. Just come into a little bit of core stability. Maybe have your arms down at your sides, maybe out to the sides, maybe even a little more challenging, bringing your arms up overhead. So you're just waking up the tubular core, feeling that sense that you're a tube, you're not a navel drawing down to the spine. Of course, that action's happening, but you're more than that. Your core is more than that. And the knees back into the chest. Right leg stretches straight on the ground. Left knee into the chest. Feel that extension in the spine. Give it a nice good squeeze into the knee and hip. Feel free to move your ankles, roll around in your feet like we usually do. And change sides, right knee in, left leg long on the ground, and feel free to move about in your feet. Good squeeze. So kind of pull the knee up a little bit toward your chest and then snug it down. All right, and then reach out like a star. Spread open your wings. Roll around in your ankles and wrists. And then exhale, knees into your chest, head comes up. Okay. Twice more. Inhale to open up big and wide. And then exhale to draw the knees and the chest up. One more time. Big wide open space. Exhale, drawing it in. All right, release your head down, feet on the ground, arms out to the sides. Let's just windshield wiper our knees. Feel free to stretch your arm in opposition of your knees, turn your head, just let a little bit of that twisting vibe start to come in. And let's take our ball, our little squishy ball, and you might need to adjust how squishy it is. You might need to lessen it, okay? So less can be more in this. And we're gonna put it right underneath your sacrum. So just feel, now this is not nearly as stable as a block underneath you. So just notice that and keep your feet on the ground for a moment so that you have that sense of just noticing, where do you tend to shift? Do you tend to drop the left hip or the right hip? Can you feel the center of your sacrum? What are the subtleties that keep you there? And then let's ground the feet. And as you ground the feet, notice what turns on and what helps you stabilize. So it's not just pushing your feet into the ground. There's other things that start to kick in your core. Can you feel your transverse abdominis? Maybe a little bit of your pelvic floor start to kick in. Find your breath. Now allow your pelvis to melt for a moment. Just sink the pelvis onto the bolster, onto the ball. And just enjoy the ease. Okay, and then we're going to just do a little bit of subtle core work here. So first, just lift your right foot off the ground and notice, that you have to stabilize with your core here. So find that sense of your transverse abdominis. Notice if you want to sway side to side. See if you can keep as stable as possible on the ball. And then right foot down and lift your left foot up. And what is helping you? So feel into the deep core, the pelvic floor. Find these subtler muscles and put those feet on the ground. Now we're going to lift both feet up. And, this is a little wobbly. I'm sure you're going to feel a little wobbly. Let's bring the knees a little closer to your chest so that you're assured to be on the bolster without straining your back. Okay, and now with our knees over our pelvis instead of toward our chest, try to have your knees land over your hips. And we're going to do some taps. Now we've done this lots on the ground without a ball. So just notice when we're tapping. And if this is too hard for you, you can go back to 2 feet on the ground and lifting one knee up and dropping the foot down and lifting the other knee up and dropping the foot down. So both are really good to help you learn how to stabilize the pelvis. So don't feel like you have to do the harder version right away. Sometimes the easier version is a little bit better for helping your body cue those subtler muscles in your pelvic floor and deep low floor. How's your breath? Tapping one foot down and then bringing that chin back up, tapping the other, bringing the knee back up. And then now let's just stay in the reverse tabletop and bring your hands straight up in the air. Find your breath. Notice if you tend to lean one side or the other on the ball, and then put your feet back down onto the ground. Lift yourself off of the ball and find the ground. And just feel the stability. You know how when you go ice skating and you take your ice skates off and you kind of still feel like you're skating a little bit when you get down on solid ground. So just notice if your proprioception kind of takes a moment to recognize that there's stability underneath you. All right, so now hopefully that turned on a lot of the subtle muscles that help you keep your pelvis nice and stable. Okay, let's bring our right knee into our chest. Now your left foot, let's start with your left foot on the ground, knee bent. Okay, take your strap and wrap your strap around your right foot. Lift that right leg straight up in the air, Supta Padangusthasana. We'll do the whole sequence here. So now notice when, if you always straighten your left leg, notice the difference when your knee is bent, your left knee is bent, rather, not right, your left knee. So notice that it might be a little easier to keep the pelvis in that very neutral place. Then slowly start to straighten your left leg and just notice what might want to happen. What do you have to resist happening? Does your right hip want to hike up toward your right shoulder? Do you want to tip to the side at all? What happens in your low back? Just pay attention to what you have to work with to keep the pelvis in a neutral, stable place here. And then if that's undoable or not comfortable, put your foot back down on the ground and find just the right spot for you to be in this posture. Stretch up through your foot, root down through your hip. And let's just flex and point our toes. So hook that strap around the arch. And then draw the right femur bone back away from your shoulders. Drop the hip bone, the femur bone down into the hip socket and extend the spine. Stretch up through your heel. Find your breath, heaviness in your head. All right, we're going to open the right leg out to the right. So grab the strap. Now pay attention. How is your left leg doing? Again, you can have your left leg straight on the ground, but maybe it's better for you to bend your left knee and put your foot on the ground. Maybe it's better for you to kind of cantilever your left knee out like a butterfly to help you feel that stabilization of the pelvis. So start with your pelvis in a stable place where you're not doing weird things, turning to the right or hiking a hip up. How can you stay grounded and stable on the ground? Extend through your spine, reach through your foot, feel into your breath. It's very easy to have tension in your neck and shoulders, so keep monitoring your breath and the way you're holding your upper body. And lift that leg straight back up again. Doesn't matter if your left leg is bent or straight, you can cross your right leg over to the left now. Hand in the left, or strap in the left hand. Have your right hand, the heel of your right hand,
in your right hip crease and press your femur bone away. And feel all the space you're giving to that hip joint. Lengthen through your spine, stretch out through the big toe and the inner heel, and notice your left leg. If it is straight on the ground, did it roll out to the side? Can you turn it so that your thigh, your kneecap, your shin, and your toes are all pointing straight up? Feel the extension of your body, the long, long spine. All right, come back up. Lift that leg back in the air. And now we're going to take the strap off, one-legged. So feel into where you want your arms, down at your sides, out to your sides, up overhead. And can you keep your pelvis nice and stable and not letting the right hip hike up as you slowly lower your right leg down to the ground? Once you're there, lie down with two sides on the floor evenly and just notice the whole leg and pelvis on the right versus the left. How do you feel? What are the differences between your left and right sides? Full breath. And then bend your knees and take your left foot in the strap. Wrap around that arch. And now let's start with your right knee bent, foot on the floor, and feel the evenness across your pelvis. So, the femur bones aren't doing, they're different, right, in the hip joints right now, but they're not incredibly different. They're not like doing splits, okay? So feel that slight sense of symmetry. Drop your femur bone down toward the femur bone into the hip joint. And now we're going to slowly slide the right leg straight and see what changes. And it might be different because you've already opened up one side. So you might have a different sensation on this side than you did on the other. But just pay attention to how your pelvis feels. Okay. Are you still able to have a neutral low back? Are you still able to feel the sit bones widening a bit? And then decide, do you want your leg there or bent? So put your leg where you want it to be. And then feel free to have a moment to kind of stretch and flex point and flex your foot or roll your ankle if that feels nice. And then check in with your shoulders, let them melt down and relax. The spine is really spacious. See if you can root the femur bone down toward the earth and take the femur bone away from the shoulder. Stretch up through your heel. Feel your head and neck relax. Okay, let's take the strap into the left hand. Open out to the left here with your left leg and decide, maybe you want your right foot to be on the ground with your knee bent. Maybe your right knee wants to fall out to the side. Maybe your right leg wants to be straight. What helps you stabilize your pelvis on the ground? So you're not tipping and rolling, you're not having an arch in the back. Feel the extension of your spine. Feel the openness of your hips. Breathe well. Then reach that left leg back up in the air. Take the strap over to the other side. And if your right knee is bent, you can still cross your left thigh over your right thigh, but you can also straighten your right leg. If your right leg is straight, be mindful. So your thigh, your kneecap, your shin, your toes all pointing straight up. With your left leg, maybe put the heel of your left hand in the hip crease and press away. Find a slight inner spiral of that thigh. Keep your head and neck heavy and relaxed on the ground. Okay, let's lift that leg straight back up in the air. And let's put just your left leg in the air. Right leg is wherever you want it to be. Knee can be bent or leg straight. Let go of the strap. Put your arms where is comfortable. Overhead is the hardest. And then out to the side is next, and down at the side is easiest. So find your way. Breathe, stabilize. Now notice what's happening in your low back and your SI joints and your pelvis. Can you keep things neutral? Work with femur bone dropping deep into the earth. Extend your spine, engage your core, and slowly lower your leg down to the ground. All right, stretch out like a star, deep breath. Exhale, knees into your chest, head comes up. And let's roll over onto your side and come up onto your hands and your knees. All right, so all fours, moving through some cat-cows, feeling the beautiful movement of the spine, the arching of the back, the rounding of the back. Take your time. You've already done a fair amount of work in your legs. Let's see if we can now open up higher, feeling the spine get free. And then roll around. See if you can sway through your hips. Find any movement that feels really good in your back, your shoulders, your neck. All right, and then a few moving into child's poses. So first, lift your sit bones high, a good arch in the low back. Drop your femur bones way back and feel compression in your hips and knees. And then up and round your spine, tuck your tail and roll back. Find that the femur bones open up in the joints a little bit, but maybe your back has a little more compression. And back up, tailbone high, anterior tilt, back to child's pose. Compress the hips. Feel the space in your back. Back up onto all fours, round the spine, roll back towards child's pose. All right, so just a little bit different depending on the angles of your pelvis. Inhale, reach the left arm up in the air. Exhale and slide that shoulder down and find a twist. Breathing well. Let your head relax and melt. We've got our back up in the air. Hand comes down onto the ground. Change sides. Arm lifting. Exhale, slide that arm under. Gaze toward the floor. Let your neck relax. A big breath in. Soft breath out. Inhale, arm lifting up to the sky. Hand comes down onto the ground. Curl your toes under and find dog pose. All right, so we've already done so much to open up our legs. So just feel, pedal your feet, maybe open the calves up a little bit more here. Round through the index finger mounds and thumbs. Feel that sense of extension and length, the heart lengthening up toward the pelvis. Breathe deeply and well. And lift the femur bones up into the hips and draw them back. Root down into the big toe mounds and stretch your inner heels. Find the evenness across your pelvis. All right, walk your feet forward. Come into Uttanasana. Fold from the hip joints. Bend your knees. So when you do this, have a sense that you have the ability to tip your pelvis forward like a big bowl of soup, a big bucket of water that's just tipping forward. Let your neck be relaxed. And then grab some blocks. Even if you usually do this with your hands on your thighs or shins, let's grab some blocks for this. All right, feet are hip width apart. Bend your knees so that you can tip the pelvic bowl forward. Lift the sit bones high and lift the tailbone high. Relax again. And we're gonna move here with breath. Inhale for a halfway lift. Straighten your legs, press your thigh bones back, spine is straight and long, and then melt again. Bend the knees, tip the pelvis, relax the head down. All right, now move with breath. Inhaling to lengthen out into your half splits with straight legs and spine. Exhale, bend the knees, tip the pelvis forward, relax the spine, waterfall it down. Twice more. Halfway lift, thigh bones back, stretch open your feet. Exhale and melt and fold. Let the head relax, the spine lengthens. One more time. Feel that big length in your spine. And when your exhale comes, melt and relax. Rising all the way up. We've been down there for a while, so you might be a little dizzy. So take your time. You can cross one thigh over the other thigh. Press your hands into each other to squeeze to get your blood pressure to come climbing back upward if you get dizzy. Okay, so feet hip width apart. Rising up, open the chest. Lean back, let's open the heart, spread your arms, cactus your arms, whatever feels good, and then release your hands down. Interlace your hands, open up the front of your shoulders, bend your knees very deeply, and roll forward again. Arms away from spine, stretch open your shoulders. And then release your hands down to the ground or to the blocks, a halfway lift again, straight spine, straight legs. Melt and fold. Step your left foot back to a lunge. Now here we are with our legs doing oppositional things again. So just pay attention. How is your pelvis? Do you have a sense that you tilt it all? Can you draw the right femur bone back into the hip joint, the left femur bone back into the hip joint, so that you have that sense of the pelvis is centered? Drop weight into your front foot and feel free to bend your back knee if the straightening of it is too much. Lengthen the spine. And then as we start to move like we always do, straightening and bending, pay attention to what's happening in your spine and pelvis. Do you tend to round your back when you do this? Do you tend to hike the hip out or forward? See if you can pay attention and try to keep the length of your spine and the stability of your pelvis paramount in your thoughts. Move with breath. Let's go ahead and find the lunge. Drop some weight into the feet. Climb up so you can find that fullness of the front leg bending. And remember, your back knee can bend a little bit if it helps you keep your pelvis in a neutral place. If you straighten that leg out and you just end up tipping the pelvis forward and smushing the low back, try to soften the back knee so you can find your way into a neutral pelvis a little bit better. Reach the arms wherever serves. Feel the grounding of your feet, the rising of your spine. Can you feel the right femur bone draw into the hip, or the left, the front femur bone draw into the hip? I can't remember which side I told you to be on. Find your breath. And then let's release the hands down. Step your front foot back, dog pose. And so find that neutral place again, balancing the pelvis. Take your feet wider. You can turn your toes in a little bit, so this can help you feel that inner spiral of the thighs, the inner groins kind of roll back and soften. Heads of the femur bones drawing away from the shoulders. Feel into your breath. When you're ready, you can bring your other foot forward, since I can't seem to recall my lefts and rights. Okay. So bring that foot forward and find your way into a lunge on your second side. The spine is long. Again, plug your femur bones into the pelvis. See what it feels like to try to balance the hips so you're really symmetrical left to right across your pelvis and sacrum, even though your femur bones are doing different things. Once begin to bend and straighten, pay attention. Do you tend around your back? Do you tend to
Move your hips, see if you can keep things square and long and spacious as you bend and straighten the front knee. Breathing well. And a lunge, dropping in, rising up. Okay, so with that back knee, do you want to bend it a little bit or does it feel comfortable straight? So just like when we were on the ground in Supta Padangusthasana and we were deciding whether our knee was going to be bent with our foot on the floor or our leg straight, same here. How much extension can you get in that back leg without messing with your pelvis and low back? Reach the arms up, feel that extension. Use your core. Remember those deep low belly muscles we activated, the pelvic floor that we activated. Drop into your front foot so that you have the support, really, of both feet. Breathe well. Can you feel the extension of your back hip flexors without compromising your back? All right, hands down onto the ground or blocks. Walk your back foot forward, Uttanasana. Halfway lift again, the legs get strong and straight. Melt and fold back to dog pose. So whatever, wherever, however you like to get back there, whatever foot you want to bring back first, feel the extension. So feet are hip width apart now. Drop weight until cross the toes. Lift the femur bones up and back. Forward into a plank. Hold yourself nice and steady and feel that stabilization of the low belly. Breathing well. Tubular core, 360 around you. Wrap your core around you. You can find the ground. Knees can come down first if your body needs that support. Roll the shoulders a few times. Inhale, cobra pose, a big open chest. Exhale, melt again. All right, now curl your toes under and see if you can lift your core a little bit so that you feel as if you could lift up into chaturanga. We're not going to, but feel your shoulders drop back. Lift the inner thighs as if you're trying to lift your body. Press your hands into the ground. So maybe you just are less weighted on the ground. And then melt and fold. Again to a cobra. Big open chest. Relax. Let's come into a very wide-legged child's pose. So take your legs weirdly wide and stretch your hips in this way. Feel the symmetry across your pelvis. Breathing well. Bring your knees back to neutral. We're going to take the right foot forward, the left foot back. All right, so find your lunge. We're going to keep the back knee on the ground for a moment. Take your hands, they can be on blocks or on the ground, on the inside edge of your right foot. So feel that deep hip compression in the front leg. Extend the spine. Find your breathing. Okay, feel into the hip flexors of that back leg. Start to open up a bit. Curl your toe under and lift that femur bone off the ground. Now, this is a much deeper position for your pelvis to be in, your legs and your pelvis to be in, to try to find that symmetry. So lift the head of your left femur bone up, widen your sit bones, engage your core, lengthen your spine, ground your front foot, and press your knee toward your arm. Step back to dog, a big breath, and we'll switch sides. Bring your left foot forward, knee starts on the ground. Hands on the inside edge of that left foot, and you can stay here. You don't ever have to lift your back knee up off the ground. You're just going where your body goes, okay? So feel into that deep compression of the hip joint, extend the spine. Notice even here before we lift your foot off the ground, what's happening in your pelvis. Are you turning a little bit? Are you dropping one hip lower? Now curl the toes under the back foot and start to lift, if you want, lift the kneecap off the ground and find runner's lunge. Now your legs are doing very different things here. So how do we find that balance point of the pelvis? Hug into the pelvis with your femur bones, wide sit bones, lift the head of that back leg, the femur bone. See if you can lift it in the hip joint. Drop the left hip down, lift the right hip up. Extend the spine. Breathing well. Okay. And we're going to bring your front foot back. Dog pose. And walk your feet forward. Take your feet as wide as the mat, probably, maybe less wide. I'm a little less wide. Come into a deep squat. So Malasana, Garland pose. See if you can have your elbows inside your knees and adjust. And if you can't, you can sit on a block in this posture. You can put a blanket under your heels. Just go as deep as your knees and hips will allow you to be. So not everybody can get this low. I totally recognize that hips and knees sometimes don't flex this deeply, but be where you can be. Open across the chest, collarbones get wide. A little work for the upper back here to hold you upright. Right. And then relax and lift up to a wide-legged Uttanasana. Okay, we're going to turn sideways on your mat and come into a deep knee bend on your right with your left leg straight. So just go as far into Skandasana as you can. Lift your heart, feel the sense of space, and stretch open the inner groin and the inner thighs. Flex your foot, find your breath. And we're going to come all the way over to the other side. You can walk with your hands. Of course, you can do it with no hands if your knees are in a happy enough place for that. Extending the heart forward, stretch the inner leg all the way to your inner foot. Flex your toes, point them up toward the sky. Breathing well. All right, and we're going to come into a nice wide squat here. So feet are much wider than we had before. Elbows inside your knees to coax those knees open. Try to have your spine long and face your parallel to the floor. So you're just tipped over halfway. Extend the spine. Drop weight into the four corners of your feet. See if you can widen the sit bones and drop the hips another inch. All right, straighten the legs now. Hands can come on ground or blocks. Take your feet comfortably wide and start to melt down. There's, you have three different sets of hamstrings, three hamstring muscles on each leg. I'm just trying to get into all the nooks and crannies. The eye bones move back, shin bones slightly forward, so we're not locking out our knees. Lift the sit bones and tip like we did in Uttanasana. Tip forward from the pelvis, not from the spine. Let your spine just waterfall and follow the movement of the pelvis. Heel toe your feet in. And come up to stand. Now we've spent a fair amount of time tipped over. So, if you need to adjust from being dizzy, adjust from being dizzy. Okay. All right, so find Tadasana. Breathing well. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. All right, stand on your right leg. Lift your left knee high up toward your sky. Feel that sense. Now, oftentimes when we're in the air in a bounce pose, this is where our hips get all misaligned. So notice if you hike a hip out, or if you hike the other hip out, or if you push the pelvis forward, Try to keep that sense of neutrality in your pelvis. And then bring your foot down onto the ground and change sides. So as you do this, ground through your standing legs, soften your knee, try to keep the hips in line with each other instead of dropping one out or the other out to the side. Breathing well, standing thigh bone moving back, crown long, tall. And then release and melt. Inhale, arms coming up. Exhale and float forward. Step your left foot back, right foot forward, coming into a lunge again. Rising up, crescent lunge, reach and lengthen, open up a little bit more. Find the openness of your belly, of your hip flexors. Exhale, hands down onto the ground, half splits. Grab your blocks if you want. Lift that leg high in the air. Now again, notice if your hips come offline, see if you can square the pelvis. You can come up onto your right toes for a moment and then descend the heel while accentuating the lift of the right hip. Feel that symmetry in your pelvis as best as you can, even though your legs are doing oppositional movements. Take a deep breath. As you exhale, squat down. Jiva squats, feel your thighs. Push slowly off of your leg, extend that leg in the air. Put your foot down onto the ground, Uttanasana. Balanced pelvis. Take a deep breath. Straighten your legs. If you bent them, standing on left leg, now right leg in the air. Balance a teacup on your sacrum. So try not to hike the right hip high. See if you can square the hips. Inner spiral your right thigh. Press your feet. Extend your spine. With your standing leg, can you lift the left femur bone up and back? You might even want to come onto your toes and then drop your heel to do that. Breathing well. Symmetry in the pelvis despite the legs. When your next exhale comes, Jiva squat, drop down in, knee behind, tucks behind knee, and then press your legs straight, extend and place your foot down onto the ground. Decide, do you want your legs wide? Do you want your legs close? Do you want your legs touching? Bend your knees and melt. Let your spine follow toward the ground. Tailbone lift, sit bones lift. Feel the top of your sacrum loosen toward the ground. Let's come down onto our knees, and we're going to come into the splits. Okay, so now this is a big pose. So if you want lots and lots of props, you can get blankets and bolsters and whatever else you need. Our right leg is going to come forward. Now, for some people, this pose is just unattainable, and that's totally fine. If you're on a wood floor, sometimes it's nice to put a little washcloth or a little something under your front heel so you can slide a little bit more. And I like to put blocks underneath my hands to help me take a little bit of my weight off of my body so that I'm not bearing down on a sensitive pose. So now I can't do the splits. I used to be able to do the splits, but I can't now. So I have blankets that are underneath my back leg. So for you, it would be your left thigh. Okay, so just find your way into the splits best as you know how. Lift the chest. Notice if your front leg wants to turn out, toes up, knee up, thigh straight toward the sky. Square up the hips, plug your knees into your pelvis. Use that deep low core. How's your breath? And then when you're ready, we'll slide out of there. Now, if you're very hypermobile, it's very important to not let your joints get lax in this pose. So even though you may think, oh, I'm stiff, I'm tight, that's actually more protective than if you were very hypermobile. So be very mindful if you're hypermobile to be careful. You can engage your hamstring while you're flexing it. So or you can While you're stretching it, you can also engage it. So if you press, once you're in the pose, if you press your heel down and drag your heel back toward the pelvis, it will engage and ignite some of the fibers of your hamstrings. So you're less likely to overstretch at the attachments at your sit bones. Get as much height under your hands. Sometimes I've done this with two chairs next to me, with hands on chairs. Notice if you're leaning to one side or the other. See if you can keep your weight balanced. Square the pelvis. Plug the knees back up into the hips. Engage your pelvic floor and your deep low belly to support the lift of the spine. Toes pointing straight up. Your kneecap is pointing straight up. How's your breath? Now, I know it's not everybody's favorite posture, but what's different here? What are you getting into that you don't usually? All right, and then drag your back foot forward. Come into child's pose. So neutralize the pelvis. See if you can just soften the hamstrings, soften the hip flexors, let everything relax. A breath in and a breath out. Okay, we're going to find our way back onto our back and grab your ball again. So second round with the ball. Did you feel like it was too inflated before? Would you like to deflate it a little bit more, inflate it a little bit more? Like, what was your vibe with your smushy ball? And of course, if you don't have a smushy ball, you can do this on a block, but it's just, or even a rolled blanket, so that we have, the blanket will be a little less stable, which might be helpful for what we're trying to do. And if you're feeling vulnerable in your SI joints, just put something stable in there, under there, and rest. Okay. All right. Let's put the ball underneath your sacrum, and just first have a moment of just receiving. Receive the pressure. See if you can balance this out a little bit. Breathing well. Notice the difference of resting on this versus a block. The lower inflated, the less inflated the ball is, the easier this maneuver is. So, of course, deflate the ball more, inflate the ball more for your liking. All right, we'll start with one left foot on the ground, and we're going to lift the right knee up, or right foot up off the ground. So you can lift it as high as you want, but just feel into what's creating the stability for your pelvis right now. Are you breathing? And then put that right foot down onto the ground and lift the left. Do you have more stability with one foot versus the other on the ground? Where is the work? Feel your deep core, your pelvic floor, your hip flexors. Relax that. Now, again, you can choose to do this with feet on the ground, and you're just lifting one knee and then lowering the foot back down, lifting the other and lowering the back down. Go slow. And then if you want a little bit more challenge, knees start up in the air, shins parallel to the ground, knees over pelvis, and we're dropping one foot, heel or toe, whichever you are comfortable with, bringing it back up. So lots of deep intrinsic tubular core here, the bottom of your cylinder, the pelvic floor, and you're wrapping around the deep core, your hip flexors, everything's sharing in the work here. How is your breath? Your arms can be down at your sides, out to the sides, or up over your head. Nice and slow. Do not go rapid fire through this. Once you finish
On the side you didn't start on, go ahead and rest again, feet on the ground, breathing well. After a couple of breaths, you can take that ball out from underneath you and rest your pelvis down on the ground. A full inhale and a complete exhale. Just rest here. See what's alive in you. Move into a twist. Scoot your hips a few inches to the right, knees come up and drop left, and enjoy a twist. Rest into it, breathe into it. Back to center. Shimmy your hips the other way. Knees drop right. Turn your head left. Relax. Pick up the knees, bring them back in. Bring the knees to the chest. Just kind of check in with your back. Maybe have pose. Nice. All right, now we're going to do Supta Baddha flat on the ground with our back. Take one block on each side. Soles of the feet together. Let your knees fall out to the sides and take the blocks and stick them under your outer legs somewhere. So it can be close up toward your pelvis, a little further out on your thighs, whatever feels comfortable. And so make sure this is a happy place. If your back is a little unhappy, do this with a blanket under your pelvis. Maybe even 2 blankets under your pelvis. So whichever feels best. We're not putting a blanket under our back today. So if anything's going to lift, it's going to be a blanket across your mat underneath your pelvis. If you're comfortable with no blanket, just rest here with the blocks. Even if you can do this without the blocks, I suggest the blocks for today. You want your body to melt into this, not stretch into it. This should not be anything creating strong sensation in your legs or hips. Let it be soft sensation so that you can just breathe deep into the low belly, deep into the pelvis and the pelvic floor. And enjoy the symmetry, or notice the asymmetry, but pay attention to what you're feeling. can transition this posture into Shavasana whenever you're ready, and however you like. If there's anything you need to do to settle your body, do that. You can also stay right where you're at. You can really before you move and feel your pelvis round. See if you feel even and symmetrical, or your thighs wavy. And let's invite movement however you want. Invite breath. Eventually finding your way onto your side. Take your time. Breathing well. And come up to sit as you are ready. Let's find your seat. And when you do, there's no rush to get here. You can stay lying down. But when you do find your seat eventually, see if your pelvis feels grounded. There's a sense of evenness. Breathe into the deep, low center. Let's offer the gifts of our practice, our energy, our focus. Share. Send your loving kindness to another. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.